Every Elder Scrolls game begins in a remarkably similar way. You're nobody, a prisoner with no reputation, no power, and no clear future. Yet somehow, through fate, prophecy, or sheer coincidence, that same prisoner goes on to become one of the most influential figures in the history of Tamriel. From stopping Daedric invasions to defeating dragons and saving entire provinces, every protagonist leaves behind a legacy that shapes the world in extraordinary ways. But what's truly fascinating isn't just what these heroes accomplish, it's how different they all are. Some are destined by ancient prophecies, others simply find themselves in the right place at the right time, and a few succeed through determination rather than destiny. Many vanish from history almost as quickly as they appear, leaving behind countless unanswered questions about who they really were and what became of them after their adventures ended. This is the curious case of every Elder Scrolls protagonist. Every Elder Scrolls protagonist has an unusual story, but none are quite as mysterious as the Eternal Champion. As the first hero in the series, they occupy a strange place in the history of Tamriel. They save an empire, defeat one of its greatest usurpers, recover legendary artifacts, and restore the rightful emperor to the Ruby Throne. Yet compared to later protagonists like the Nerevarine or Dragonborn, very little is actually known about them. They have no divine prophecy surrounding their birth, no mythical title recognised across Tamriel, and no grand destiny waiting to be fulfilled. Instead, they begin as an ordinary prisoner who finds themselves caught in a conspiracy that threatens the entire empire. In many ways, the Eternal Champion establishes the formula that almost every Elder Scrolls game would later follow. An unknown prisoner is given an impossible task, travels across an enormous province, grows from complete obscurity into a legendary hero, and then quietly disappears from history once their work is done. While later games refined that formula, Arena introduced it first, making the Eternal Champion one of the most important characters the series has ever produced, despite remaining one of its least discussed. The Champion's journey begins during one of the darkest periods in Imperial history. Emperor Uriel Septim is betrayed by his own Imperial battle mage, Jagar Tharn. Using powerful illusion, magic, and manipulation, Tharn imprisons the Emperor in another dimension before magically disguising himself as the ruler of Tamriel. To almost everyone across the Empire, nothing appears unusual. The Emperor still sits upon the throne, orders continue being issued, the Empire continues functioning. Only one person manages to see through the deception, apprentice mage Ria Silmane. Before she can expose Tharn's betrayal, she is murdered, yet death does not completely silence her. Her spirit reaches out to a prisoner deep within the Imperial dungeons. That prisoner eventually becomes known as the Eternal Champion. It is a remarkably humble beginning. Unlike the Nerevarine, there is no ancient prophecy announcing their arrival. Unlike the hero of Kvatch, they are not immediately caught in world-changing events. Unlike the Dragonborn, they possess no unique supernatural abilities. They simply happen to be in the right place when someone desperately needs help. Ria Silmane becomes their guide throughout the adventure, appearing as a spirit after death. She directs the champion towards the Staff of Chaos, an immensely powerful artifact shattered into 8 pieces by Tharn to prevent anyone from challenging him. Recovering each fragment becomes the central objective of Arena. While modern Elder Scrolls games often focus heavily on personal stories and memorable companions, Arena embraces the feeling of a grand expedition. The champion travels across nearly every province of Tamriel, from Skyrim's frozen mountains to Alswire's deserts, from the forests of Valenwood to the volcanic lands of Morrowind. Few protagonists experience such an enormous journey. The scale alone distinguishes the Eternal Champion from every hero that follows. Rather than becoming deeply connected to one province, they become a hero whose adventure spans an entire continent. Looking back today, that journey also serves as a fascinating glimpse into Tamriel before much of its modern lore had fully developed. Arena introduced players to countless kingdoms, races, and cities that would later become iconic. The champion therefore acts almost like an explorer discovering Tamriel alongside the player. Every dungeon cleared, every city visited, every artifact recovered. All of it helped establish the foundations upon which the rest of the franchise would eventually build upon. Of course, recovering the Staff of Chaos is anything but simple. Each fragment lies hidden within dangerous ruins, protected by monsters, traps, and powerful magic. The champion gradually becomes stronger with every victory, transforming from an anonymous prisoner into one of the Empire's greatest adventurers. Although Arena's storytelling is much simpler than later entries, this progression remains incredibly satisfying. Nothing is handed to the champion. Every achievement must be earned through perseverance. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of the Eternal Champion is how ordinary they remain despite accomplishing extraordinary things. There is no indication they are chosen by the Divines, no evidence they possess dragon blood, no reincarnated soul guiding their actions. Their greatest strength is determination. Again and again, they overcome impossible obstacles through courage rather than destiny. That idea would become one of the defining themes of the Elder Scrolls. Heroes are often shaped by circumstance as much as prophecy. When the Staff of Chaos is finally forged, the champion confronts Yagothan inside the Imperial Palace. The final battle is not merely a duel between hero and villain. It represents the restoration of legitimate rule after years of deception. Throughout Tharn's reign, countless political decisions, military campaigns, and acts of governance occurred under false leadership. The champion doesn't simply rescue one man, they restore the empire itself. Uriel's septum is freed from imprisonment and returns to the throne. Order is restored, and the greatest crisis of the Third Era, at least at that point, comes to an end. Considering the importance of these events, it is surprising how little history remembers the champion personally. Later protagonists receive legendary titles. The Nerevarine fulfills prophecy. The hero of Kvatch becomes the Defined Crusader, and eventually Sheogorath. The last Dragonborn is forever associated with dragons and the voice. The Eternal Champion receives recognition, but history remembers their accomplishments more clearly than the individual behind them. Those anonymous characteristics feel strangely appropriate. The first Elder Scrolls protagonist also becomes one of its greatest mysteries. Their race is never defined. Their appearance remains entirely up to the player. Their gender is never established in official lore. Even their ultimate fate is unknown. Once the Emperor is restored, the champion largely vanishes from recorded history. There are scattered references suggesting they continued serving the Empire in some capacity, but no definitive account explains what happened afterward. Did they retire peacefully, continue adventuring, accept an important Imperial position? No one fully knows. That uncertainty perfectly reflects Bethesda's long-standing philosophy. Player characters belong to the player. Future games acknowledge their victories without ever limiting players' personal interpretations. In many respects, the Eternal Champion laid the foundation for every protagonist who followed. They begin imprisoned. They received guidance from a mysterious mentor. They undertake a journey across dangerous lands. They gather ancient artifacts. They confront an overwhelming enemy. They ultimately save Tamriel before quietly disappearing into legend. Those narrative elements echo throughout Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and even beyond. Without the Eternal Champion, the identity of an Elder Scrolls protagonist might look very different today. Their influence extends beyond story structure as well. Arena established the idea that ordinary individuals could change the fate of nations. Kings command armies, emperors rule provinces, yet history often turns because one unknown person chooses to act when everyone else cannot. That message remains central to the series decades later. There is also something fitting about the champion's relative obscurity. Arena itself is sometimes overshadowed by later entries with richer lore and more sophisticated worlds, yet none of these games could exist without it. The Eternal Champion shares that legacy, often overlooked, rarely discussed, but absolutely essential. Every legendary protagonist who follows walks a path first carved by this forgotten prisoner. Ultimately, the curious case of the Eternal Champion is that they are simultaneously one of the most important and one of the most mysterious figures in Elder Scrolls history. They overthrow a tyrant who successfully impersonated the Emperor, recovering one of Tamriel's greatest magical artifacts, rescue Uriel's septum, and preserve the Empire at a moment where it could easily have collapsed from within. Their actions shape the future of the entire continent, paving the way for every major event that follows throughout the Third Era. Yet despite those extraordinary accomplishments, history remembers remarkably little about the individual responsible. They leave behind no prophecy, no supernatural legacy, and almost no definitive record of who they were after their quest ended. In a series filled with heroes destined for greatness, the Eternal Champion stands apart because they prove that destiny is not always necessary. Sometimes all it takes to save the world is one forgotten prisoner willing to believe the words of a ghost and refuse to give up when the rest of the Empire has already been deceived. If the Eternal Champion established the Elder Scrolls tradition of an ordinary prisoner becoming an unlikely hero, then the agent from the Elder Scrolls, Daggerfall, proved just how morally complicated that hero could become. Unlike many later protagonists who are remembered for defeating an obvious evil, the agent spends much of their journey navigating a web of political intrigue, ancient grudges, espionage, and supernatural forces that have been shaping the Iliac Bay for centuries. They are not simply an adventurer wandering into danger by accident. They are a trusted operative of Emperor Uriel's septum, personally selected to carry out two highly sensitive missions that could alter the balance of power across High Rock and Hammerfell. From the very beginning, the agent feels different from every protagonist that would follow. Rather than being called by prophecy or chosen by divine destiny, they are sent because they are capable, discreet, and loyal. Their greatest weapon is not some mythical power, but their ability to survive in a world where almost nobody can truly be trusted. The story begins with a storm. While travelling to the Iliac Bay aboard an Imperial ship, the agent's vessel is caught in violent weather and destroyed. They barely survive, washing ashore with little more than the clothes on their back. It is another classic Elder Scrolls beginning, a hero starting from nothing. Yet unlike the prisoners before and after them, the agent arrives with a clear purpose. Emperor Uriel's septum has entrusted them with two secret objectives. The first is to deliver a private letter to the Queen of Daggerfall. The second is far more mysterious. The Emperor wants the agent to investigate the restless spirit of King Lysandus. For years, the ghost of the king has haunted the streets of Daggerfall at night, refusing to rest. Something surrounding the king's death remains unsolved. The Emperor suspects the haunting hides a far greater conspiracy. What initially appears to be a straightforward investigation quickly spirals into one of the most politically complex stories in the entire Elder Scrolls series. Nearly every major ruler across the Iliac Bay has their own ambitions. King Gothred of Daggerfall, King Edwire of Wayrest, the Royal Court of Centennial, the Orcs of Oricinium, powerful noble houses, secretive organizations, necromancers, even the King of Worms himself, Manny Marco. Each faction seeks control over the same ultimate prize, Numidium. Originally created by the Dwemer and later rebuilt by Tiber Septim, Numidium is no ordinary weapon. It is a colossal brass golem capable of reshaping the political landscape of Tamriel almost overnight. Whoever controls it possesses unimaginable power. The agent therefore finds himself standing at the center of a struggle involving kingdoms, ancient magic, and the future of an entire region. Unlike later protagonists whose goals gradually become obvious, the agent constantly faces difficult choices. Every alliance carries consequences. Every ruler presents convincing arguments. Few characters are entirely good. Few are entirely evil. The Iliac Bay feels alive precisely because everyone believes their cause is justified. That moral ambiguity gives Daggerfall a tone unlike any other Elder Scrolls game. Politics often prove more dangerous than monsters. The investigation into King Lysandus reveals just how deep the conspiracy truly runs. Lysandus was not simply killed, he was betrayed. His murder became part of an elaborate scheme involving ambition, succession, and control over Numidium. His restless spirit continues haunting Daggerfall because justice has never been served. Only by uncovering the truth can the agent finally allow the king to rest. It is a fitting mystery for a game built around hidden motives. Even death refuses to remain buried when powerful people benefit from lies. One of the agent's defining qualities is adaptability. Unlike the Dragonborn, whose Thuum makes them instantly recognisable, or the Nerevarine, whose destiny shapes every major event, the agent succeeds because they can become almost anyone. Warrior, mage, thief, diplomat, mercenary, spy. The game actively encourages players to solve problems in multiple ways. That flexibility perfectly suits the character's role. An Imperial operative cannot simply charge into every situation with a sword. Sometimes information matters more than strength. Sometimes diplomacy proves more valuable than violence. And sometimes survival depends upon knowing when not to fight. The scale of Daggerfall's world reinforces this identity. The Iliac Bay contains thousands of settlements, castles, temples, and dungeons. Even today, it remains one of the largest game worlds ever created. Travelling between kingdoms genuinely feels like serving as an Imperial representative, moving through countless competing powers. The agent becomes less of a wandering hero and more of a political observer witnessing how fractured the region truly is. Every kingdom has its own priorities, every noble family has old rivalries, and every alliance feels temporary. Perhaps no relationship better demonstrates this complexity than the agent's interactions with Many Marco. The infamous King of Worms stands among the greatest necromancers in Elder Scrolls history. His goals are undeniably dangerous, yet he remains only one of several powerful figures seeking Numidium. The agent may even cooperate with him depending upon the player's choices. That possibility captures Daggerfall's unique philosophy. Victory rarely comes from defeating obvious villains. Instead, players decide which vision for the Iliac Bay they believe deserves success. That freedom reaches its ultimate expression during one of the most fascinating events in Elder Scrolls lore, the Warp in the West. After the agent finally recovers the Totem of Tiber Septim, the artifact capable of controlling Numidium, several competing powers simultaneously attempt to claim it. Ordinarily, only one outcome could occur. Instead, reality itself fractures. Through the mysterious phenomenon later called the Warp in the West, multiple contradictory endings become true at exactly the same time. Several rulers simultaneously achieve victory. Political borders shift overnight. Kingdoms disappear. Orsinium is recognized. Many Marco ascends towered godhood. The Under-King finally finds peace, and Numidium vanishes once again. It remains one of the strangest events ever recorded in Tamrielic history, and remarkably, the agent stands at the centre of it all. Unlike other protagonists remembered for defeating dragons or Daedric princes, the agent helps trigger a dragon break, an event where linear time temporarily ceases to function. History itself bends around their actions. And perhaps that is why the agent remains so difficult to define. Every player's version of events is, in a sense, canon. Reality simply found a way to accommodate every possibility. This approach perfectly reflects one of Elder Scrolls' greatest strengths. Choice matters, not merely during gameplay but within the lore itself. The agent therefore becomes a protagonist whose legacy is deliberately impossible to reduce to a single version. What happened? The answer is somehow everything. Despite participating in events of unimaginable significance, the agent eventually fades into mystery, much like the eternal champion before them. After the warp in the West, reliable historical records become almost impossible to untangle. The event reshapes reality so completely that tracing one individual's final fate becomes nearly impossible. Did the agent remain in Imperial service, retire with immense wealth, disappear into obscurity? History offers no clear answer. Once again, Bethesda preserves the player's freedom by allowing the protagonist to step quietly out of the spotlight after changing the world forever. Looking back today, the agent occupies a fascinating place within the Elder Scrolls timeline. They bridge the gap between the relatively straightforward heroism of Arena and the more character-driven adventures that define later games. Their story introduced deeper political storytelling, meaningful player choice, and moral ambiguity on a scale the series had never attempted before. Rather than asking players to simply defeat evil, Daggerfall asks them to navigate competing visions of power, justice, loyalty, and ambition. Ultimately, the curious case of the agent lies in how different they are from almost every other Elder Scrolls protagonist. They are not remembered because of a divine blessing or an ancient prophecy. They are remembered because an ordinary Imperial operative became the single most important person in one of the greatest political crises Tamriel had ever seen. They uncovered the truth behind King Lysandros' murder, navigated a maze of rival kingdoms and secret agendas, recovered the totem of Tiber Septim, and stood at the centre of the warp in the West, one of the most bizarre and consequential events in the Elder Scrolls history. Yet despite shaping the future of the Iliac Bay forever, the agent themselves remains almost completely anonymous. Their identity is lost beneath conflicting histories, impossible timelines, and a dragon break that turned every ending into a reality. It is a fitting legacy for a master operative. After completing a mission that changed the course of history itself, the agent disappears without recognition, leaving behind only a world forever altered by someone whose name history never truly records. Few Elder Scrolls protagonists carry a burden quite as extraordinary as the Nerevarine. Unlike the heroes who came before, whose journeys were largely shaped by circumstance, the Nerevarine enters the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind beneath the immense weight of an ancient prophecy that has lingered over Vardenfell for thousands of years. They arrive as a nameless prisoner released under the direct orders of Emperor Uriel's Septim, seemingly just another anonymous exile sent to the Empire's most hostile province. Yet from the moment they step off the prison ship at Seyda-Neen, whispers begin following them. Some believe they are the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar, the legendary Chimera hero who united the Great Houses and defeated the Dwemer at Red Mountain. Others dismiss the idea entirely, seeing the prophecy as nothing more than superstition manipulated by politics and religion. Even the Nerevarine themselves has no certainty about who they truly are. That uncertainty becomes the defining feature of their story. Throughout Morrowind, players are never simply told that they are the Chosen One. Instead, they spend the entire game earning that title, forcing both the world and themselves to decide whether destiny is real or whether an ordinary individual can become a legend simply by fulfilling the expectations history has created. Unlike later heroes who quickly discover unique supernatural abilities, the Nerevarine begins with almost nothing. No dragon soul, no divine artifact, no extraordinary reputation. They are a foreigner, an outlander, someone viewed with suspicion by nearly everyone they meet. Morrowind makes that isolation impossible to ignore. The Dunmer distrust outsiders, the Great Houses pursue their own ambitions, the Ashlanders reject Imperial influence. Every faction questions the newcomers' motives. Rather than immediately embracing the player as a hero, the province demands proof, again and again. That slow process of earning trust is one of Morrowind's greatest strengths. The prophecy itself is fascinating because it remains deliberately ambiguous. According to the Nerevarine prophecies, the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar will return to unite the Dunmer, cast down the false gods of the Tribunal, and defeat Dagoth. Yet nobody can fully agree on what those prophecies actually mean. The Tribunal Temple dismisses them as dangerous heresy. The Ashlanders preserve them as sacred truth. Imperial officials quietly encourage the possibility for political reasons. Everyone interprets the same prophecy differently. The player stands directly in the middle of those competing beliefs. Rather than simply accepting the title, the Nerevarine must pass a series of trials. They are named Hortator by each of the great houses. Recognised by the Ashlander tribes, accepted as the Nerevarine by the wise women, every achievement strengthens the possibility that the prophecy might actually be true. Importantly, none of these accomplishments happen automatically. They must be earned through diplomacy, combat, leadership, and perseverance. The player slowly builds legitimacy one step at a time. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding the Nerevarine is whether they truly are Indoril reborn. The game intentionally refuses to provide a definitive answer. There are certainly powerful indications. Azura herself recognises the player. Ancient prophecies appear fulfilled. The Tribunal gradually lose their divine power. Dagoth repeatedly refers to the player as though speaking to his old friend, yet certainly remains elusive. The Elder Scrolls has always embraced ambiguity, and nowhere is that philosophy stronger than here. Maybe the player genuinely possesses Nerevar's soul. Maybe Azura carefully manipulated events until someone fulfilled the prophecy. Maybe belief itself created reality. Each interpretation remains equally compelling. Dagoth himself elevates the story beyond a simple battle between hero and villain. Unlike many antagonists, Dagoth possesses genuine history with the hero they believe stands before him. Long ago, he fought beside Indoril. He considered him a friend, perhaps even a brother. Centuries of corruption beneath Red Mountain twisted those memories into obsession. By the time players finally confronted him, Dagoth speaks less like an enemy and more like someone desperately trying to reclaim the past. He offers alliances, conversations, understanding. He sincerely believes the Nerevarine should stand beside him. That emotional complexity makes their final confrontation unforgettable. The Nerevarine also becomes one of the few protagonists forced to dismantle an entire religious system. For thousands of years, the Tribunal ruled Morrowind as living gods. Vivec, Almexia, Sotha Sil, their divine authority shaped every aspect of Dunmer society, yet the Nerevarine gradually uncovers the uncomfortable truth. The Tribunal's godhood came not from natural divinity, but from the heart of Lorcan. Their power depended upon a source they could no longer reliably access. As Dagoth regained strength, theirs slowly diminished. The Nerevarines' quest therefore becomes more than defeating one villain. It transforms into the end of an entire era. Few protagonists reshaped their world's culture so dramatically. The destruction of the heart of Lorcan changes Tamriel forever. By severing the Tribunal's connection to the heart, the Nerevarine permanently ends the source of their divinity. Dagoth perishes. Akulakan is destroyed before it can even awaken. The blight that has poisoned Vardenfell for generations finally comes to an end. Entire regions once consumed by ash storms begin recovering, Corporus ceases spreading, thousands of lives are saved. The scale of these achievements rival any accomplishment elsewhere in the series. Yet Morrowind never celebrates victory with grand spectacle. Instead, it quietly reflects upon what has been lost. The Tribunal's age ends, ancient traditions collapse, the Dunmer enter an uncertain future, the Nerevarine wins, but victory comes with enormous change. One of the most memorable moments in the game occurs during the Nerevarines' encounter with Vivec. Unlike typical final allies, Vivec openly discusses philosophy, history, prophecy, and even uncertainty itself. He never completely confirms the player's identity, nor does he completely deny it. Instead, he almost encourages ambiguity. That conversation perfectly captures Morrowind's writing. Truth matters less than understanding. Certainty remains deliberately out of reach. Even the Nerevarines' immunity to Corpus contributes to their uniqueness. After contracting the horrifying divine disease, most people would eventually lose both body and mind. Yet through the experimental cure, the Nerevarine survives. The disease's destructive effects disappear while its extraordinary benefits remain. The player becomes effectively immune to ordinary illnesses and no longer ages naturally. It is an incredible transformation, though one achieved through suffering rather than destiny alone. Like everything else surrounding the character, it blurs the line between blessing and curse. The Nerevarines' fate after Morrowind only adds to their mystery. According to later sources, they eventually depart for Akavir, one of the most mysterious continents in Elder Scrolls lore. Little else is ever confirmed. No great empire bears their name. No final battle defines their legacy. They simply leave. Once again, Bethesda preserves the player's imagination while ensuring the hero remains larger than any single historical account. Compared with later protagonists, the Nerevarine arguably undergoes the greatest personal transformation. The Eternal Champion saves the Empire. The Agent reshapes political history. The hero of Kvatch defeats Maroon's Dagon. The Dragonborn masters the voice. The Nerevarine, however, changes how an entire civilization understands itself. They challenge religious orthodox, heal ancient divisions, end centuries of divine deception, fulfill or perhaps create a prophecy thousands of years in the making. Their story is as much about identity as heroism. Who are you? The reincarnation of a legendary king, a pawn of the Empire, Azura's chosen champion, or simply an ordinary prisoner who refused to abandon people in desperate need? Morrowind never forces a single answer. Instead, it allows every player to decide for themselves. Ultimately, the curious case of the Nerevarine lies in the fact that they may be both the most destined and the least certain hero in the entire Elder Scrolls series. Every step of their journey seems to point towards an ancient prophecy finally coming true. Yet the game never fully confirms whether they truly are Indoril, reborn, or simply someone capable enough to become the person the prophecy required. That uncertainty is what makes the Nerevarine so compelling. They unite the Great Houses and the Ashlanders, earn the trust of those who despise outsiders, survive Corpus, destroy the heart of Lorcan and the Blight, defeat Dagoth-Ur, and bring an end to the Tribunal's age of Defiant rule. Their actions forever reshape Morrowind's religion, politics, and identity, leaving an impact felt throughout every later Elder Scrolls game. And then, just as mysteriously as they arrived, they disappear into legend, sailing for the distant continent of Akavir and leaving behind a question that may never truly be answered. Were they actually the reincarnation of Tamriel's greatest hero, or did they simply become one through the choices they made? Perhaps, in true Elder Scrolls fashion, the answer is both. The hero of Kvatch has one of the most extraordinary journeys in the entire Elder Scrolls series, because they begin as perhaps the least remarkable protagonist of them all. Unlike the Nerevarine, they are not the subject of ancient prophecy. Unlike the Dragonborn, they possess no unique supernatural gift. Unlike the Eternal Champion and the Agent, they are not even sent on an important mission. They are simply another anonymous prisoner sitting in an Imperial cell when fate intervenes. By pure chance, the Emperor escapes into their prison during his final moments, entrusting them with the Amulet of Kings before being assassinated by the mythic Dawn. In that single moment, the hero of Kvatch goes from complete obscurity to carrying the single most important object in the Empire. Yet what makes their story so fascinating is that despite becoming one of Tamriel's greatest heroes, they never become the central figure of the prophecy surrounding the Oblivion Crisis. That role belongs to Martin Septim. Instead, the hero spends the entire game ensuring that someone else can fulfill their destiny. It is a story where the greatest hero is not necessarily the chosen one, but the person willing to do everything required to protect the one who is. After escaping the Imperial prison, the hero's first truly defining moment comes at Kvatch. It is here they earn the title by which history remembers them. The city has already fallen, Daedra roam the streets, an enormous Oblivion gate dominates the landscape. Smoke rises from burning homes, and most people at this point would turn back. But the hero walks forward. Entering Oblivion for the first time becomes one of the defining moments of the entire series. Players step into a realm unlike anything previously seen. Rivers of lava, towering fortresses, twisted creatures, a sky consumed by fire. It immediately establishes the scale of the crisis. Tamriel is not simply under attack. The barriers between worlds are collapsing. By closing the Oblivion Gate and helping liberate the city, the hero earns the name that will follow them forever. Interestingly, they are remembered for saving a city they could never truly restore. Kvatch remains scarred throughout the game. Its people remain dead, its buildings remain ruined. The title therefore represents courage rather than complete victory. Soon afterward, the hero discovers Martin's septum hiding within the ruins of the city's chapel. At first glance, Martin appears unremarkable, a humble priest, soft-spoken, compassionate. Yet he is also the Emperor's last surviving heir. The future of the Empire now depends upon someone who never expected to inherit such responsibility. The hero immediately assumes the role of protector. While Martin carries the Septim bloodline, he relies almost entirely upon the player's actions to survive. Again and again, the hero accomplishes tasks no one else can. Recovering the Amulet of Kings, defending Cloud Ruler Temple, retrieving the mysterious Xarxes, finding the Great Welkind Stone, searching for the armor of Tiber Septim. Every major victory belongs to the hero themselves. Martin's destiny would remain impossible without them. This relationship becomes one of Oblivion's greatest strengths. Rather than competing for importance, both characters depend upon one another. Martin provides purpose. The hero makes that purpose achievable. Unlike many fantasy stories where prophecy overshadows ordinary effort, Oblivion quietly argues that destiny alone accomplishes nothing. Someone must still choose to act. The hero repeatedly proves willing to do exactly that. One of their defining characteristics is resilience. Throughout the Oblivion crisis, gates begin opening across Cyrodiil. Each represents another doorway into Mehrunes Dagon's realm. Most soldiers cannot survive entering them. The hero enters willing, not once, not twice, but dozens of times if necessary. Again and again, they cross into hostile territory, fight through armies of Daedra, retrieve stones, and collapse entire realms of Oblivion. Few protagonists spend so much of their adventure invading the enemy's world instead of merely defending their own. That relentless determination gradually transforms them into one of Tamriel's most accomplished warriors. Perhaps the greatest testament to the hero's abilities is the respect they earn. The Blades trust them completely. Counts and countesses rely upon them, guild leaders seek their help, and the people of Cyrodiil begin viewing them as symbols of hope. Unlike the Nerevarine, who must constantly prove themselves against suspicion, the hero earns admiration through visible action. Their reputation spreads naturally, one victory leading to another. Yet they never become arrogant. Their greatest achievement remains helping others succeed. The hero's involvement with Cyrodiil's guilds further distinguishes them. Although technically optional, the guild questlines showcase remarkable versatility. They can become Archmage of the Mages Guild, Grey Fox of the Thieves Guild, Listener of the Dark Brotherhood, Champion of the Arena, Master of the Fighters Guild. Few protagonists accumulate so many remarkable accomplishments during a single lifetime. Whether viewed as gameplay freedom or part of the character's legend, it reinforces the idea that the hero possesses extraordinary adaptability. They excel wherever circumstances demand. Then comes the battle for Bruma. Knowing the Mythic Dawn intends to open a great gate, the hero helps unite Cyrodiil's counties against the coming invasion. The resulting battle represents one of the largest military engagements seen in an Elder Scrolls game. Daedra pour across the battlefield. Guards desperately hold the line. The hero enters the enormous Great Gate itself, racing against time to prevent disaster. It is another moment where everyone depends entirely upon one individual's willingness to confront impossible odds. The climax of Oblivion ultimately belongs to Martin rather than the hero. When Maroon's Dagon physically enters the Imperial City, even the greatest warrior cannot defeat a Daedric prince directly. Instead, Martin sacrifices himself by shattering the Amulet of Kings and transforming into the avatar of Akatosh. The dragon god defeats Dagon. The barriers between Oblivion and Tamriel are permanently restored. Martin dies, the Septim dynasty ends, and the Fourth Era begins. At first glance, it may seem the hero becomes secondary during the ending. In reality, the opposite is true. Without the hero, Martin never reaches the Temple of the One. Without the hero, the amulet is lost. Without the hero, the Mysterium Xarxes is never recovered. Without the hero, the Empire falls long before Akatosh can intervene. Martin fulfills the prophecy, the hero makes the prophecy possible. Perhaps the most astonishing chapter of their story occurs after the main quest. During the events of the Shivering Isles, the hero enters the realm of Sheogorath to stop the Grey March. Initially, they simply assist the Mad God. Gradually, however, something extraordinary happens. Sheogorath himself reveals the truth. He is not merely a Daedric prince. He is also the Prince of Order, cursed to endlessly transform at the end of every era of madness. The hero eventually defeats him, the curse is broken, and for the first time in countless ages, the prince becomes free. Someone must now take Sheogorath's place. The hero accepts that role. Unlike mantling in ordinary mythology, Elder Scrolls lore treats this transformation as something much deeper. The hero does not merely inherit a title, they gradually become Sheogorath. Later appearances in Skyrim strongly imply that the mad god encountered there truly is the former hero of Kvatch, now completely transformed through the mysterious process of mantling. If true, it gives the hero perhaps the single most unbelievable fate of any protagonist in the franchise. They begin as an anonymous prisoner, they save the Empire, then they ascend into literal godhood. No other protagonist experiences such a dramatic transformation. Even the hero's legacy reflects this remarkable progression. History remembers them as the saviour of Kvatch, and one of the greatest champions of the Oblivion Crisis. Yet somewhere beyond mortal understanding, they may also continue ruling the Shivering Isles as the Daedric Prince of Madness. It is simultaneously the greatest reward imaginable and perhaps the greatest loss, because becoming Sheogorath means slowly leaving behind the ordinary person they once were. The prisoner disappears, the hero fades, only the mad god remains. Ultimately, the curious case of the hero of Kvatch is that they accomplish almost everything while never truly becoming the chosen one. They begin as an ordinary prisoner, earn their name by saving the survivors of Kvatch, protect their last heir of the Septim bloodline, close countless Oblivion gates, defeat the Mythic Dawn, and ensure Martin Septim can fulfill the destiny that saves Tamriel from Maroon's Dagon. Yet even after all of that, their story does not end. Instead, they undertake one final journey into the Shivering Isles, where they accomplish what should have been impossible by ending the curse of the Prince of Order and ultimately taking the mantle of Sheogorath himself. No other Elder Scrolls protagonist undergoes such an extraordinary evolution. The hero of Kvatch begins life as someone with no prophecy, no special powers, and no claim to greatness, yet ends it as one of the most powerful beings in existence. Their story perfectly captures one of the central ideas behind the Elder Scrolls. Greatness is not always something you are born with. Sometimes it is something you earn, one impossible choice at a time, until the person you once were has become something far greater than anyone could have ever imagined. If there is one Elder Scrolls protagonist whose identity is defined from the very beginning, it is the last Dragonborn. Unlike nearly every hero who came before, The player in the Elder Scrolls Skyrim does not spend the entire game wondering whether they are the chosen one. That question is answered almost immediately. Within the opening hours after escaping Helgen and slaying the dragon Milminir near Whiterun, the player absorbs the creature's soul before the stunned eyes of everyone present. Moments later, the Greybeards summon them with a voice powerful enough to shake the mountains themselves. There is no longer any doubt. The player is Dragonborn, blessed with the soul of a dragon in the body of a mortal, possessing gifts that have not been seen since the days of Tiber's Septim. Yet while that revelation seemed straightforward compared to the ambiguity surrounding heroes like the Nerevarine, the last Dragonborn quickly becomes one of the most fascinating protagonists in the series, because of what that power actually represents. They are not simply another warrior tasked with defeating an ancient evil. They are the final inheritor of a legacy stretching back to the Dragon Wars, the founders of the Empire and the very gods themselves. Like every Elder Scrolls protagonist, the journey begins as a prisoner. Unlike previous games, however, the player's execution is interrupted by history itself. Alduin, the World Eater, the first dragon seen in Tamriel for thousands of years. His attack on Helgen changes everything. What initially appears to be a simple escape becomes the opening chapter of an ancient prophecy finally reaching its conclusion. For generations, dragons existed only in stories. Suddenly, they return, and with them comes the only person capable of stopping them. The Dragonborn's greatest gift is the Thu'um, the voice. Unlike ordinary mortals who spend decades mastering individual shouts, the Dragonborn instinctively absorbs dragon souls, using their knowledge to unlock words of power almost effortlessly. It is an ability unlike anything seen elsewhere in the series. Every defeated dragon permanently strengthens the player. Enemies become opportunities. Victory literally grants new power. The relationship between dragons and the Dragonborn is therefore unique. Each battle is more than survival. It is inheritance. The soul of an immortal creature passes into another destined to wield it. The Greybeards recognize this significance immediately. Living in near isolation atop of High Hrothgar, these ancient masters of the voice spend decades in quiet meditation. When they summon the Dragonborn, it's not simply because a talented warrior has appeared. They believe history itself has begun moving once again. Their guidance introduces players to one of Skyrim's central themes. Power demands wisdom. Mastering the voice is meaningless without understanding why it exists. Perhaps the Dragonborn's most fascinating relationship is with Paternax. Once Alduin's lieutenant during the Dragon War, Paternax betrayed his own kind to help humanity survive. Thousands of years later, he becomes one of the Dragonborn's greatest teachers. Their conversations explore questions far deeper than simple heroism. Can evil truly be overcome? Does one's past permanently define them? Is overcoming one's nature more admirable than never struggling at all? Paternax admits he constantly battles his own dragonic instincts. His wisdom comes not from perfection, but from choosing goodness every day despite temptation. The Dragonborn learns that true strength involves far more than shouting enemies from mountaintops. The conflict with Alduin reaches beyond dragons alone. According to Nordic mythology, Alduin is not merely another powerful dragon. He is the World Eater, a being destined to consume the current world so another may eventually begin. Whether Alduin has abandoned that cosmic purpose in favour of conquest remains one of Skyrim's most intriguing mysteries. Regardless, his return threatens all mortal life. Stopping him becomes far more than protecting one province. It becomes preserving an entire era of existence. The journey eventually takes the Dragonborn beyond Tamriel itself. Into Sovngarde, the legendary Nordic afterlife, they stand beside ancient heroes who first defeated Alduin during the Dragon War. Together they accomplish what neither generation could achieve alone. Past and present unite. History finally reaches its conclusion. Defeating Alduin represents one of the greatest moments in Elder Scrolls history, not because the battle is spectacular, but because it fulfills a story thousands of years in the making. Unlike previous protagonists whose adventures largely remain confined to one crisis, the last Dragonborn continues facing extraordinary challenges afterward. The return of Miraak introduces perhaps the only individual capable of truly understanding the Dragonborn's power. As the first Dragonborn, Miraak represents an alternate path the player could have followed. Rather than using his gifts to protect Tamriel, he sought domination through Hermaeus Mora. His corruption serves as a warning. Immense power inevitably affects dangerous influences. The confrontation between the two Dragonborns therefore becomes deeply personal. It is not merely hero versus villain. It is one Dragonborn proving that destiny does not dictate character. Choice still matters. The Dragonborn's interactions with Hermaeus Mora further complicate their story. Unlike earlier heroes who genuinely avoid permanent relationships with Daedric princes, the last Dragonborn repeatedly enters dangerous bargains. Knowledge comes at a price, power comes with obligations. By defeating Miraak, the Dragonborn effectively becomes Mora's newest champion, whether they intended to or not. Exactly what consequences that relationship carries remains one of Skyrim's lingering mysteries. The civil war unfolding throughout Skyrim provides another unique aspect of the protagonist's story. Unlike the main quest, players choose which side to support, the Imperial Legion, the Stormcloaks, or neither. The Dragonborn possesses enough influence to determine the future of an entire province while simultaneously dealing with dragons, vampires, Daedric princes, ancient ruins, and political instability. Few protagonists shoulder so many responsibilities at once. Like the hero of Kvatch before them, the Dragonborn may also become leader of nearly every major organisation in the game. Harbinger of the Companions, Archmage of the College of Winterhold, Guild Master of the Thieves Guild, Listener of the Dark Brotherhood, Champion of multiple Daedric princes. The sheer range of accomplishments become almost unbelievable. Whether interpreted literally or simply as gameplay possibility, the Dragonborn emerges as perhaps the most accomplished adventurer in Tamrielic history. What truly distinguishes the last Dragonborn, however, is the balance between destiny and personal freedom. Unlike the Nerevarine, whose identity remains uncertain, the Dragonborn unquestionably possesses extraordinary abilities. Yet those abilities never determine who they become. A Dragonborn can rule wisely or cruelly, serve the Empire or fight against it, study magic, reject it, protect innocence, or embrace darker paths. Power creates opportunity. The character determines its use. Even the title Last Dragonborn carries fascinating implications. The prophecy found upon Alduin's Wall speaks not simply of a Dragonborn, but the last. Whether that means the final Dragonborn who will ever exist, or merely the last needed to confront Alduin remains uncertain. Bethesda intentionally leaves the question unanswered. And as always, mystery strengthens the lore rather than weakening it. The Dragonborn's ultimate fate also remains unknown. Unlike the Nerevarine sailing to Akavir or the hero of Kvatch becoming Sheogorath, later Elder Scrolls games have yet to reveal what becomes of Skyrim's hero. Some speculate they remain in Skyrim, others believe Hermaeus Mora eventually claims them entirely. Perhaps they simply disappear into legend like every protagonist before them. Whatever the truth, history will undoubtedly remember their achievements. Looking back across the entire franchise, The Last Dragonborn represents the culmination of ideas introduced by every previous protagonist. Like the Eternal Champion, they rise from imprisonment. Like the Agent, they navigate political conflict. Like the Nerevarine, they fulfill ancient prophecy. Like the hero of Kvatch, they prevent an apocalyptic catastrophe. Yet they also introduce something entirely new, a protagonist whose very soul grants access to powers once reserved for dragons themselves. Ultimately, the curious case of The Last Dragonborn lies in the remarkable contrast between absolute certainty and limitless possibility. Of every Elder Scrolls protagonist, they are the one whose identity is confirmed the earliest. There is no mystery surrounding whether they are Dragonborn. The dragons themselves acknowledge it. The Greybeards proclaim it. The souls they absorb prove it beyond question. Yet despite that certainty, no protagonist offers players greater freedom in deciding what kind of hero they become. They defeat Alduin and the greatest dragon threat since the Dragon War, journey into Sovngarde alongside legendary Nordic heroes, overcome Miraak, master the Thu'um, and shape the future of Skyrim itself. But everything beyond those defining moments remains entirely their own. They can be a noble champion, a feared assassin, a brilliant mage, or all of them at once. A hero chosen by destiny, empowered by the gods, yet still defined not by prophecy alone, but by every decision they make along the way. Of every Elder Scrolls protagonist, none has a more unusual beginning than the Vestige. While most heroes start their journey as prisoners awaiting execution or exile, the Vestige begins their story already dead. Before the events of the Elder Scrolls Online, they are sacrificed to Molag Bal by the Worm Cult, their soul violently torn from their body and claimed by the Daedric Prince of Domination. That single act fundamentally changes what they are. Rather than passing on to an afterlife like an ordinary mortal, the Vestige awakens within Coldharbour, Molag Bal's twisted realm of oblivion, reborn through chaotic creation into a soulless being capable of returning from death again and again. It is one of the darkest origins in the entire franchise. The player is not simply escaping prison or fulfilling an ancient prophecy. They are trying to reclaim something that had already been stolen from them, their very soul. That strange existence defines everything that follows, making the Vestige perhaps the most unique protagonist the Elder Scrolls has ever introduced. Coldharbour immediately establishes the tone of the journey. Unlike the volcanic chaos of Maroon's Dagon's Deadlands or the surreal madness of the Shivering Isles, Coldharbour exists as a cruel imitation of Nirn. Cities stand abandoned, chains stretch endlessly across the sky, dark towers dominate the landscape, everything feels familiar in the worst possible way. Molag Bal has recreated pieces of the mortal world only to corrupt them. The Vestige awakens in this nightmare with no understanding of what has happened. Their body exists, their soul does not. Escaping Coldharbour becomes the first great victory. The Vestige breaks free from the realm that should have remained their eternal prison. Yet freedom does not restore what was lost. The absence of their soul remains a constant part of their existence. This unusual condition explains one of the defining gameplay mechanics of the Elder Scrolls Online. Unlike previous protagonists, the Vestige can repeatedly die and return. Within the lore, this is not simply a gameplay convenience, it is a consequence of what they have become. Created anew through the chaotic substance of oblivion, the Vestige reforms after death rather than passing into an afterlife. It is a fascinating blend of gameplay and storytelling. Death itself becomes another obstacle rather than the end. Perhaps no protagonist has a more personal conflict with a Daedric prince. Molag Bal is not simply threatening Tamriel. He has already violated the Vestige in the most fundamental way imaginable, stealing their soul. Every victory therefore carries deep personal meaning. Stopping the Plain Meld is not merely about saving the world, it is about reclaiming identity. The Plain Meld itself represents one of the largest crises in Elder Scrolls history. Molag Bal seeks to drag Nirn into Coldharbour, merging the mortal world with his own realm of domination. Massive dark anchors descend from the sky, entire regions fall under attack. Reality itself begins breaking apart. Unlike many earlier games that focus primarily upon one province, the Elder Scrolls Online presents a continent-wide disaster. Every alliance suffers, every race faces the same existential threats. The Vestige becomes one of the few individuals capable of travelling freely between these conflicts, gradually emerging as Tamriel's greatest champion during the Second Era. The Prophet plays a role similar to Rhea Silmane or the Blades in earlier games. He provides guidance while slowly revealing the true nature of the conflict. Eventually, his identity becomes one of the game's most satisfying revelations. The mysterious old man is actually Varen Aquilarius, the former emperor whose failed attempt to light the dragon fires triggered the Soul Burst. His mistake shattered the barrier between Nirn and Oblivion, creating the perfect opportunity for Molag Bal's invasion. Rather than hiding from responsibility, Varen dedicates himself to correcting his failure. Together, he and the Vestige form one of the series' strongest partnerships. Neither can resolve the crisis alone. The Vestige's search for their soul culminates in one of the most symbolic moments in the franchise. After confronting Molag Bal directly, they reclaim what was stolen. Their soul returns, yet remarkably, the Vestige does not simply become an ordinary mortal again. Their experiences have fundamentally transformed them. They emerge stronger, wiser, and forever shaped by what they endured. The journey becomes less about returning to who they once were and more about accepting who they have become. Unlike the Nerevarine or the Dragonborn, whose stories largely conclude after the main quest, the Vestige's adventure continues across countless chapters and expansions. In many ways, no protagonist experiences more history. They confront the Daedric Triad, battle dragons in Elsewire, investigate ancient vampire conspiracies in Western Skyrim, journey into Blackwood, explore High Isle, travel through Necrom, return to Morrowind, and visit Somerset. The sheer scale of the Vestige's adventures is unmatched. Rather than saving one province, they repeatedly become involved in crises affecting nearly every corner of Tamriel. This gives the character a fascinating identity. Instead of being remembered for one defining achievement, the Vestige accumulates an almost unbelievable catalogue of accomplishments. Again and again, different cultures look to the same mysterious hero for salvation. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Vestige is adaptability. Because The Elder Scrolls Online takes place centuries before the mainline games, the political landscape differs dramatically. 3 competing alliances struggle for control. Ancient civilizations remain active. Powerful individuals long dead by Skyrim's era still shape events directly. The Vestige successfully navigates all of these worlds. Whether helping the Dunmer of Morrowind, the Altmar of Somerset, the Khajiit of Elsewire, or the Nords of Skyrim, they constantly prove capable of earning trust across every culture. Few protagonists become so universally respected. The Vestige continues making compassionate decisions long before reclaiming what was stolen. They build friendships, protect strangers, show courage, demonstrate loyalty. The game quietly suggests that morality survives even when the soul does not. Character exists independently of circumstance. That philosophical question gives the protagonist remarkable depth. Even after recovering their soul, the Vestige never truly returns to ordinary life. Their experiences have permanently separated them from everyone else. Very few mortals have escaped Cold Harbour. Even fewer have confronted Molag Bal directly and survived. Fewer still have continued saving Tamriel again and again across multiple continents and crises. Like every Elder Scrolls protagonist, the Vestige becomes, eventually, something larger than life. Yet they never lose the deeply personal motivation that began their journey. Everything started with a simple desire to reclaim what was taken. Looking back across the franchise, the Vestige occupies a fascinating position. The Eternal Champion saved an empire, the Agent reshaped political history, the Nerevarine fulfilled prophecy, the hero of Kvatch became a Daedric prince, the last Dragonborn defeated Alduin. The Vestige, meanwhile, repeatedly saves Tamriel from threats, both mortal and divine, while overcoming perhaps the most horrifying origin of them all. They begin as a victim, a soul stolen for another's ambition. They refuse to remain one. Ultimately, the curious case of the Vestige lies in the extraordinary contradiction at the heart of their story. They begin as someone who, by every natural law of Tamriel, should no longer exist. Their soul has been stolen, their death has already occurred, and they awaken in Cold Harbour as something caught between mortal and immortal existence. Yet instead of being defined by what they lost, the Vestige becomes one of the greatest heroes in Elder Scrolls history. They escape the realm of Molag Bal, stop the plane meld, reclaim their soul, and continue travelling across Tamriel to confront dragons, vampires, Daedric princes, ancient cults, and countless other threats over the course of the Second Era. More than any other protagonist, their story is about identity. It asks whether a person is defined by their soul, their fate, or the choices they make when everything has been taken from them. By the end of their journey, the answer becomes clear. The Vestige was never a hero because of the soul they carried. They were a hero because even after losing it, they still chose to save the world. What makes every Elder Scrolls protagonist so memorable isn't just the worlds they save or the enemies they defeat. It's how differently each of them reaches that point. Some are guided by prophecy, others by duty, revenge, or pure circumstance. They come from different eras, face different threats, and leave behind vastly different legacies. Yet they all begin the same way, as someone the world overlooks. Perhaps that's the real magic of the Elder Scrolls. History isn't always shaped by kings, gods, or armies. Sometimes it's shaped by an unknown prisoner who happens to be in the right place at the right time and chooses to act when no one else can. Long after their adventures end, their identities fade into myth. Their fates become mysteries and their stories pass into legend, leaving players to decide what happened next. And with the Elder Scrolls 6 on the horizon, one question remains. Who will be the next forgotten prisoner to change the fate of Tamriel forever?